Here I'm also here, and it is my great pleasure and honor to introduce David Diamond Moriello and Leah Shaper of the Oppenheimer Ranch Project. They are extraordinary permaculture experts, having a 80-acre permaculture farm in Pagosa Springs, as well as harbingers of what we are about to deal with, and really promulgators of sovereign life. So it is my honor and pleasure to introduce some of my favorite people in the world.
Welcome to the 34th Annual Crestone Energy Fair. We're going to be talking about reclaiming your sovereignty and how to become more self-sufficient, which actually involves a lot more than growing your own food and having an outhouse. So first of all, let's get a feel on the crowd here. How many people feel the world changing in a way where you're losing control of your sovereignty? Raise your hand. Right, this globalist agenda is trying to convince the world that they are going to own nothing and they're going to like it. When in fact, sovereignty is all about owning your rights to your own individual decisions. So we're going to be talking about two things here: individual sovereignty, and then move into the sovereign mindset, which is happening here in Crestone, where you can have 80 different belief systems and yet still have community that can bond together to bring everything up. So, but everyone can own their own private property and have their own thing going on. But then there's an event like the Crestone Energy Fair where all different types of people come together for the greater good. And so that's the whole purpose of this talk at the end, to get to that point and what we can do. Because I don't know if you know, for the last several decades, anybody that listens to or watches the mainstream media, we're all being slowly brainwashed to lose our sense of sovereignty. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, something big just happened in the last few years where many people bought into the commercialization of multi-billion-dollar corporations that were looking out for you.
Capitalizing on fear. Yeah, so I mean, this is a typical pattern for brainwashing the public and getting people to believe that they have to do a certain thing, is that you scare the crap out of them, and then you're very likely to get them to come along with you. But when you look at the big picture, a lot of this is based on corporate profit and has nothing to do with your individual sovereign choices. In fact, it discourages your individual sovereign choices. And so we're vehemently against that.
Right, so when you're watching a paid promotion from a multi-billion-dollar corporation, they're probably not telling you something that's in your best interest. And a lot of people have thrown out their television 10 years or longer. How many people threw the TV out the window? Yeah. And now we're turning towards other platforms to get our news, but you've got to be very selective. Critical thinking is important. You know, a lot of people listen to one channel or something like that. It's much better to get your information from multiple sources, do your own research, and make your own decisions. That would be the sovereign way to do it.
There is an extraordinary amount of misleading information out there, and I think the hardest part for most people is being able to decipher the good information from the bad information. One of the things that I think we're really lacking in our society these days is teaching people, and children especially, critical thinking. I consider myself very fortunate because as I was growing up, I really was taught how to think about things critically.
Building community saying that the EMTs and the fire department aren't going to be there?
I said, you know, if the grid goes down and there's no communication, people are not going to go to their jobs. That's not fearful.
Or a rural electric co-op? Has the rural electric co-op even been here?
This isn't respectful.
They aren't being respectful.
We're giving a talk. You're very angry and interrupting our talk.
They don't know anything about this place.
Yes, that you do. Please let
What
them
do they
talk.
know? What do you know about the rural electric co-op? and Excel.
So I'm sure the rural electric co-op and Excel and the grid system will be resilient in certain cases, yes. You're right. And we're not talking about that.
Are you kidding me? They're producing more solar now that we can...
Why are you so angry about this talk?
But also the national electric infrastructure has a lot of potential failures, and that's just been widely talked about.
Yeah,
this is
we
not
need to
something
get
new.
to-
There's going to be more because of climate change. So why aren't you talking about
Let them
that?
talk! Let them talk!
All right, so our main concern is an EMP from a foreign nation during war, which will shut down your solar resilient bullshit, or a large solar flare from the sun, like the Carrington event, which will fry
This
your
is something
solar
that has happened in history.
Guys, this is not balanced, okay? There's nothing balanced.
There's nothing
here.
balanced about you,
And if you're
trust
going to
me.
believe this, then I'm really sorry for you. And next year, the Energy Fair needs to really talk about the infrastructure that's being developed here. And with that-
Why doesn't she have a talk?
Why don't you give a talk?
That's a very good question.
Why don't you give a talk?
Good question.
We're allowed to have our perspective. You can have yours.
Oh, whatever.
Wow. Okay.
The climate always changes, by the way. So I just want to get that out there.
Okay, so where were we?
We were basically finishing up, and the whole purpose of this talk is to be talking about the worst case scenarios. We don't want any of them to happen, but if you study history and you've spent the amount of time that we have spent looking into the science of cycles on Earth, all of you, if you don't know, should know now that there has never been a monetary system that has lasted more than 250 to 270 years. And that's where we're at. There's a shift. The empires all end. There are no empires like the hysterical woman thinks are lasting forever. It's never happened. And if you've been following what's happening in the world over a period of decades, the world is becoming a control mechanism by the elites, which would probably drive her insane. And everyone feels it. Everyone can feel what's happening. And the reason you're sitting here is because we want to talk like-minded solutions on what happens when this happens. We don't want to run into the house. We want to be prepared. We always say it. The way we're living now took 8 years. Like, if the power goes out and we're being invaded on the major cities, they're not coming to Pagosa anytime soon. And we need to be self-sufficient, resilient, with backup medical supplies or knowledge of herbal medicines to respond. Because we're going to become the EMS. We're going to have to help the community. Like, on our road, we have a surgeon. She's the one that's going to set the broken bones, because the hospital's not going to be open. As delusional as she thinks the EMS is going to be up and running, it won't be. There's no supply chain. There will be no supplies coming to the hospital. So this is in a very big event. I'm not saying it's happening tomorrow. I'm not saying it's happening next week. It may never happen. But I'm sure we can all feel something big is shifting. And if it is the globalist shift where they're going to shove us in smart cities and take control of our lives, there's going to be a group of us that resists and does not do that. And so I don't know what they'll call us. The outcasts.
They will call us outcasts. I'm pretty
There'll
sure
be a
of that.
vaccine to prevent the disease that we carry. I'm sure you.
I think that one of the things that we're all subject to is, we live in the wonderful first world where things are relatively stable, and so there's this sense of things will always be the same and fine and perfect. It's the same about, there's a perspective about the sun, that the sun never changes. Well, the sun is actually quite dynamic and it's always changing, which has effects on our climate on Earth, just as an example. And so I think that to remain in that mindset where nothing will ever change, I think is a mistake. I don't think that we have to run around being scared, but there is what is your phrase? You always say, be prepared, not scared, which is a different thing. And then, you also raised a different point, but you also raised part of this element of being prepared is having people in your community with different skills and really capitalizing on that. Because that's really where a community comes together. There's the surgeon over here who knows how to do this. We also have 2 people on our road who are military sniper trained, which is like fantastic. And they also happen to be right in an excellent location on our road. And so I can go to that person and I can learn how to shoot better. Or I can go to the surgeon and I can improve my skills of stitching people up, which my skills are very minimal, but I have a little bit. But just
She took a class.
I did. I took one class, and I haven't really practiced very much. So, but having all of those skills, that's part of sovereignty too for your community, because it means that you can stand on your own feet as a community.
Yeah, so that really threw a monkey wrench in it. But the whole climate fear has to end. There is no climate catastrophe. 12,900 years ago, in an 1,100-year period during the Younger Dryas event, temperature changed 23 degrees C. They're talking about we're all going to die with 2 degrees C. That's natural climate variability. Additionally, carbon dioxide is 0.07% of our atmosphere, and humans account for almost none of it. The ocean controls it. So the fear that these people that are running around with their heads cut off about a trace gas is controlling our future is delusional. And this is why the media has won.
Here's a little bit of perspective about carbon dioxide. Our current levels of carbon dioxide are roughly 450 parts per million. At about 170 or 180 parts per million, plants start dying because plants eat carbon dioxide. In the geological past, carbon dioxide has been as high as 4,000 parts per million. Guess what? The Earth didn't burn up. If you look at simple data of temperature and carbon dioxide, if you look at a simple graph of the last few thousand years, carbon dioxide actually follows temperature in that graph, not the other way around. And it's quite obvious when you just look at the simple data. We are not in a crisis. This is not a climate emergency. It's a bunch of hogwash.
So you're saying that the fossil fuel industry is not contributing to greenhouse gases?
Yes, that is what the
CO2 is plant food.
Oh, really?
correct.
Yes, it is plant food. That's what plants eat. That's what they eat. It's simple
so
science.
The globalists are so delusional, Bill Gates is now burying 750,000 trees to save the earth. The barrier reef has
Or actually,
more,
the barrier reef has
coral
recovered.
than ever in history.
It has
This
recovered.
year.
Some have, most are not.
The barrier reef in 2023 has more coral than ever in history, ma'am. You are delusional.
Fossil fuel to renewable.
Renewables are the most polluting on Earth.
You need tons.
Cobalt.
Oil and gas
Lithium
make
mining.
solar panels.
Comparison.
Do you know
Yeah,
that
there is.
solar panels are made from oil and gas?
Yeah, you need to stop.
They are made from oil and gas. Everything plastic that you have is made from oil and gas.
There's no way to make a solar panel from the sun, ma'am.
Technology is changing everything.
It's made with oil and gas.
It's still made from oil and gas.
Now, with hemp.
All of
With
it.
other fiber materials that you're so willing to elevate.
What are we elevating? What are we elevating in this talk?
We should be using hemp batteries, but there's a federal ban on hemp. Hemp batteries can store 10 times the electricity of lithium.
To renewable energy.
Batteries with better materials would be much better. Most batteries.
They're happening right now.
So what are you screaming about?
You're here.
Yeah, okay, we think that's great.
Yeah, absolutely. What you don't realize.
We realize.
What you are not highlighting here is there is so much happening right now. Let me just say this.
Are you going to make this your talk now? This is our talk. This is our time. If you want to give a
I'm
talk,
part of a panel, and I'm creating.
this is not a panel.
This is not
This is
a
our
panel.
talk. If you want to give a talk with your perspective, that's fine.
If you want a healthier perspective,
Yeah, absolutely.
want a healthier perspective.
Absolutely. We can do questions.
Let's go to questions.
Well, I mean, how much longer?
You don't have to listen to this if you don't like it. You're perfectly free to walk away.
Are you either of you engineers?
He's a geologist. I studied physics and philosophy of science.
And
Booyah!
I've never met someone as rude as you in my entire life.
rude. Oh,
We're in the middle of a talk and you jump out and interrupt the whole thing.
everything you're saying is rude.
It's not rude. These are facts.
You're disrespectful.
Facts don't care about your feelings.
No, facts don't care about your feelings.
You're the only person who feels disrespected here.
That's what
You're being
No, we're not.
disrespectful to everybody.
This is information. So it's disrespectful to provide people information.
This is, what am I trying to say? What I'm trying to say is that there are solutions
Yeah, but not without
solutions are happening right now.
And we are also
There
talking
are
about
people
solutions.
that are working very hard
Chris,
to
please
create
sidebar
these
with them.
solutions,
Just do it after
and
this.
solutions aren't
knows.
about
This is not your
guns
talk.
and fear.
These
Okay,
people have
they're not.
many solutions.
You would you post your everybody else.
All right. So why don't you?
You have heard stuff. You cannot say. You're not listening.
Chris, sidebar with them. Chris, sidebar with them. Just go sidebar with them if you want to talk with them, please. Please.
Take over the mic now. This is not your talk.
Thank you.
No, no,
not that Chris, no one wants to hear you talk here.
We are here because we want to hear it. Because we want to hear it.
I'm going to say I really wish right now that I was wearing a shirt I was going to bring that says "Free Speech Matters." There is no such thing as a good idea that can only be heard by shouting down someone else.
That's right.
Community is about finding solutions, coming up with ideas, working with each other, figuring out what works and what doesn't, and that's why we're having this conversation. We may have ideas that are very different than the ideas of other people here, and that's fine. That's why we're giving a talk. That's why we have a question and answer period. Part of free speech is listening to things that you don't agree with and tolerating that. And it doesn't matter how crazy those things are. I'll give you an example. On Saturdays, we do a radio show. The radio show is sponsored by it's on a platform called Revolution Radio. It's internet radio. There's a bumper that comes up in our intermission during our show, and it's about a guy who has ideas that we don't agree with. One of them is that Adolf Hitler was not as he seemed.
Yeah, he was a nice guy.
Yeah. So, but we tolerate this bumper being in our show because it's a free speech platform. If we were to run away from this platform simply because of this person that has an idea that we don't agree with, that's essentially cancel culture, and that is against free speech. So we stay on that platform for a reason. So I just wanted to say that,
and one
how
other
important
thing.
free speech is, and it's not about shouting people down. We're not allowing other people to hear other people's ideas. That is crazy, and frankly, that's a fascist attitude.
Yeah. And we are so anti-pollution and pro-earth and rebirth of the earth. The earth has been destroyed by industry, and which is why I gave the talk on the Johnson Sioux bioreactor. We are not pro-oil and gas, we are pro-reality. The reason we have heat, the reason we are all comfortable and American is because of oil and gas. We are not ready for a complete shift to any other thing but oil and gas, and they're doing it now, which is why gas is $5 a gallon, soon to be 10. It's going to continue to go up if they push the shift, and then we're going to get power outages, because there's not enough wind and solar to power our homes. And the backups used to be oil and gas and coal, and they're shutting them down. So our way of life in this transition is not going to be the way we used to live in comfort. It is going to be what they want. You will own nothing and be happy, and you'll get heat when they say it, and so on and so forth. So we deserve the right to fight for, we're Americans. We're freedom of speech and freedom of cheap heat. That's our position. We are not pro-pollution. I helped start the first march against Monsanto in 2011. I organized 1.4 million people in 14,000 cities worldwide because they are polluting our food. And that's why we need to go back to permaculture. That's why we need the Johnson Sioux bioreactor. We need to get back to nature. We need to fix the earth. And listening to the multi-billion-dollar controllers is not going to help.
And also, just on the energy front, one of the other things that really concerns us is, say, for example, everybody was to move on to renewables and EVs. Well, all of these things also have their own dirty byproducts. Those batteries are full of minerals that require dirty mining, and it often takes advantage of people in poverty and children. So there's huge problems with doing all of that mining. She's correct in saying that we need better battery technologies that are built out of hemp. But there's no way with our current infrastructure that we're going to have an entire country running on EVs and everybody running solar panels. The grid is already completely overtaxed as it is. So just want to throw that out there.
Yeah, can't we all just get along?
How about some questions?
Yes.
So
Cameraman.
you talked about the salmon. Is that salmon that's caught out of a farm or out of the river?
Kokanee salmon run in our landlocked reservoirs at high elevation every year. It's a landlocked salmon called kokanee. And if they let it pile up, they become stinky piles of dead salmon. So the Park Service nets it, and there's this huge line of cars with coolers, and they just give everybody a giant amount. Yep.
So I agree, climate change is completely wrong, but there is desertification happening.
Yeah.
In Delta County, desertification's coming into the valleys there.
Well, they're doing cloud seeding here.
How do you see the future of how we can regenerate the soil in places where people want to live and
Peter May is the king in this town on reviving this high desert soil. He did several talks on it. He's working on very similar to adding more mycorrhiza and fungi. If you add that to the soil, you fix everything. Instead of sheet flow, the water starts getting captured.
how do you see people surviving during the desertification? The grid goes down, it's desertifying still, what do we do?
You build swales, you trap all the rainwater, you start to build a permaculture resiliency. This valley has so much amazing water at a very shallow depth, some of it just shoots out of the ground. So if you have water in a desert, you'll be fine. You need seeds though.
But also, I think you should, in certain situations, also consider where you are, right? Because there are natural cycles of change, and sometimes things change in a way that we just have to move. And I'm not suggesting that people leave here, because I think that there's definitely a lot you can do. Like he said, with swales, you have an amazing aquifer here. There's so much you can do with that. But sometimes I think we really have to look at what the natural changes are and go with that flow.
Because most of the desertification started in the turn of the century, overgrazing, and then they don't replace the biome. So if you start from the margins, like up here in Crestone where the trees are, and you move it out into the flat, you can bring it with you. That's basically permaculture. Take the margin and draw it with you. It's very hard to establish anything in the middle of the valley here. I mean, you got 80 mile an hour winds, minus 30. You need to put up a fence if you're going to do it there, and you're going to need that will mimic the margin. So,
One of the things we can start doing now is prepare.
Yeah.
As a community,
yes.
build swales today.
Yes, exactly.
Build swales today for abundance tomorrow.
Yeah.
And get with Peter May.
There's actually an amazing new group that's being run by Sharice Schreiner and Lisa Bodie and a few other people who are trying to connect greenhouses in the area, in the valley, and help them and bring online old greenhouses that maybe people have bought but don't know how to use. And,
Oh, yeah.
And for the betterment of the community, so getting community groups together to farm them, learn how to grow in the grow domes, do a culture mounds, things like that. There's a lot of amazing projects in the San Luis Valley that are focused on food sovereignty in the area and in Crestone. If you want more information, definitely dial in with some of those people and myself. There's some amazing stuff here, and we're really grateful to you guys for bringing to our forefront the awareness that it's not going to be easy, but it is possible.
Awesome. Thank you, Nick.
And make sure your greenhouses are rigid. We've lost them all. You don't need to spend money on buying a $5,000 piece of plastic. Get recycled windows. Make a south-facing Korean-type geothermal greenhouse. We have 2 designs you can find on our website. We got earth tube. I've used climate batteries. I've used thermal mass and water, everything. And we can tell you exactly what to do and how it works the best. You can create Zone 8 and Zone 9 greenhouses here that are massive for just a few hundred or thousands of dollars that would cost $500,000. And all you just need is, start collecting windows and stuff.
Yeah, we failed, so you don't have to as much.
That's easy to do, this technology, and that allows you to grow, we grow tropical plants and fruits and tomatoes and peppers, so you get this full nutrient profile, and you can be more self-sufficient. What were you up to?
Colorful shirt.
2 questions. One, can you repeat the name of the soil gentleman that was the soil guy you said in this area?
Peter May.
Peter May. And then I think it's awesome what you're doing as far as bringing together the community, taking care of each other as a community. You guys are close, though. When it comes to the St. Louis Valley, who are the people that are organizing and correlating these groups of resources within, and how can we get involved in that?
Well, I'm not the expert on that, and Nick just left, but there's a bunch of groups in Crestone that of community organizations. If you specifically for food sovereignty, the San Luis Valley Seed Exchange, Jay Saunders runs that. It's every March or April at Joyful Journeys Hot Springs. Our permaculture farm, our main crop is seeds. We grow as many varieties of high alpine seeds to give away free here, so we can spread the resiliency, because it takes years to create a seed for this elevation. So we do it for you so that you can immediately start producing food at your elevation. And we do that every year. We give out millions of seeds at the San Luis Valley Seed Exchange, so show up there if you got no money, and you get all free, high altitude, hardened permaculture seeds.
Yeah, that's another reason. It's another reason to start doing things now, right? Because you get a chance to climatize your own seeds and make them work for this area. Somebody else over here had a question? No?
I have a question.
Not so much a question, but more of comments kind of back to the whole mining and alternative technologies. Like, there's a lot of technologies that are known that utilize the existing infrastructure that's already in place. Like John Dee's SSG, just a bicycle that matches around, gets together in one induction coil. You can basically re-service old batteries, 12-volt batteries.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And it desulfates the batteries, it gets into life-new condition, and then there's heat, which is invented by Paul Cantone.
Yeah, we've been talking about that.
Adaptations to combustion diesel, any fuel-based burning equipment, so we can utilize the infrastructure that's already all around us without having to recreate all these industries, which are basically greenwash, what you're talking about.
Yeah.
They used to press sorghum and make with mules in a circle. I mean, you don't need a generator and biogas. You need a mule. I mean, we don't have to think in a technological way when we're in a bad time. People start to think crazy because we look in a square and we get an answer. But when we can't look in a square and get an answer, we really have to think the way that they already thought it through hundreds of years ago. When we didn't have electricity, we were doing it in a different way. You can still buy sorghum presses that run by mules and humans. So there are lots of alternatives that we can go back to mechanical. Plus, there's these alternative energy generation using coils and alternative fuels. There's going to be so much waste oil and stuff like that if we have engines that can run on that, let's do it.
Yeah, and it's not a...
Say with the heat processor, I mean, you can basically run it on all kinds of fuels, and I get to see it as a way to utilize all the waste, the automotive, the gear oils, the plastics. You're basically using induction coils to turn it into a vapor and channel that gas, because it's all petroleum byproduct.
Yep.
It is a byproduct of that fuel that we're burning in our vehicles. Just utilizing that waste that we're blowing. And we look at the trash cans even here that are full of all that trash. All that can be utilized to be powering our vehicles instead of going to the pump constantly.
Yeah, and the majority of pollution from oil and gas is the production. It's not it sitting in a barrel.
Yeah.
So if we can recycle all that, we have probably billions of gallons of used fuel oil, cooking oil, and all types of other products that we could use in the future.
And just going back to sort of our original part of this talk, it's not an accident